Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 76 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today, Kris and I are excited. We have Sarah Dajani from Boosted Commerce on with us. And Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Dustin. Thanks, Kris. Really excited about it.
Well,
thanks for joining us.
This is hot right now. There's a lot of acquisitions going on in the Amazon world right now, and as sellers, it's a fascinating topic because and Kris and I, when we started, the idea of exiting our business wasn't really in our minds. But anybody who's starting right now, you should be building right from the get-go to sell. So that's what we want to dive into, and that's what this is going to be about, and it's really exciting. But for everyone listening, Sarah, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I'm Sarah Dajani. I'm VP of Operations at Boosted Commerce, overseeing the food and some of our supplement brands. I'm part of a really great team that's doing a lot of hard work on Amazon. We're comprised of sellers and former CPG brand experts. My background is a little bit different. I started out my career in actually management consulting. I worked all over the world, getting to talk to companies of all different sizes, sometimes in tech, sometimes in industrials, and in all sorts of countries. It was a great start to my career. And then I sort of settled into the entrepreneurial phase of my career, starting a food business. It was a little bit online, mostly offline, and I was actually making the food myself, manufacturing it in the kitchen every day. And then I realized the importance of Amazon and got into that world. In small startup brands, doing organic baking mixes and frostings, and then also in bigger brands. I was at a brand owned by Procter & Gamble in the personal care and beauty space as well. So that's what's brought me here to Boosted.
Okay, I got to go over a few things real quick because I'm super fascinated by this already. So you started your own food business out of your house or out of a kitchen and sold online?
Yeah, we sold online. I and a business partner, we were in London actually, and we were doing pastries. Selling. We started out selling online. We were doing like a D2C business. And then we got picked up by a department store called Harrods, which is like a pretty big one in London.
Sure.
And we're doing that. So this was at the time where, the worlds of retail and D2C were really converging. And so we were launching just during that time, and experiencing the trials and tribulations of both sides of it.
That's fascinating. Yeah, and so I can just think now all of the different things you have to work through if you're selling food through e-commerce, just in terms of shipping and freshness and all that. Was that through your own website, or was that were you selling like Amazon and stuff as well?
It was through my own website, although I did toy with doing an Amazon business with a supplier abroad as well. And that was one of the things that brought me to Amazon. But it was pretty fresh stuff. We had short shelf lives, and so we were in the kitchen a lot, baking a lot, like 11-hour days on our feet, and so it was definitely challenging. As you all might know, food is a relatively low margin business as well. So there's that pressure, on top of it all.
And what kind of food item were you selling, if you don't mind sharing?
We had like 8 or 9 gourmet products. They ranged from like cookies to loaf cakes to meringues, which were really fun because meringues are sensitive to humidity. So that was really, really fun to make and deliver. And then, on the D2C business, we also did like eclairs and stuff like that, which obviously were like, 1-day shelf life type of thing.
I'm getting hungry. I absolutely love meringue.
Yeah.
You brought it up, and now that's all I'm thinking about right now.
Well, then we did stuffed meringues. So we had meringues that were like stuffed with sesame paste and chocolate and like all sorts of crazy stuff.
We may just have to talk about this for the rest of the time.
We need to stop doing these podcasts like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon during lunch. I get so hungry.
Yeah, oh man, that sounds so good. Well, let's move ahead now in your story. Now, let's talk a little bit about Boosted Commerce. Just let everyone know sort of what you guys are doing, a little bit about just the background of the company and what's going on with y'all right now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Boosted, as many people will know, is founded by Keith Richman and Charlie Chanaratsapan, who are really two giants in their respective industries. Keith in marketing and a lot of Silicon Valley industries, as well as e-commerce, and Charlie is sort of a retail king in my eyes, having managed a company with more than 5,000 stores and also a lot of employees and teams, and they started Boosted. And there's a really cool story about it that I'll let them share one day. But they started Boosted with this idea that a lot of Amazon sellers are popping up and selling these amazing businesses or starting these amazing businesses, and they're so scrappy. They're finding product market fit. And you guys are examples of this, doing the hardest thing, finding product market fit by being first to platform, and really connecting the dots. It's like the entrepreneurship of entrepreneurship, right? It's just really, really cutting edge. And they recognize that there is a market where a lot of these sellers want to sell their businesses. And there is an opportunity to bring together, really smart brand people and grow these into, the new kind of Nestle 2.0 of the world with Fifth Avenue digital real estate on Amazon.
Yeah, it is a brand new world, at least for Kris and myself. Like I mentioned at the top of this, and you kind of hit it spot on. That is what we do. We find niches and we find underserved areas, and we launch products. And from the seller's perspective, an entrepreneur putting their heart and soul into one or two products or a brand, they can really do things better. I feel like a lot of times, and they're more invested than large. So and then with the scale of Amazon and the scale of e-commerce now, all of a sudden, sellers like Kris and I were like, well, we have a real business now. Yeah. This was a side hustle, and now it's a real business. And it's interesting now because for a long time, it wasn't treated that way. Like investors weren't going to throw money at somebody who they perceived as someone who is throwing products on Amazon to see what stuck. Yeah. And that's really changed recently. So it's really neat to see the investors get involved and the aggregators. And just real quick, how do you see that helping the space a lot? Because a lot of people would get, they're concerned, now you're going to have behemoths out there that you're competing against. How do you see that evolving in the space?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people see aggregators, just as these big companies or funds that buy Amazon businesses. And some people probably even think of private equity when they hear about it, which is so funny to me because I actually, as a person running businesses at an aggregator, I don't even know anything about private equity. As I mentioned, like I've started and run my own food businesses for most of my career. And so I think the reason for that perception is because we've never seen aggregators before. And so we try to fit them into the boxes we know, when really they're a consequence of a fundamental change in the retail universe, which, I can talk about more, but it's a bit of a long story, I'd say.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about it, though, if you can.
Yeah, of course. So it's an amazing story. It's a long one, but an amazing one. It fundamentally changed the way that I saw my career and saw my work as an entrepreneur. But, historically, companies like Nestle and Procter & Gamble had consumers' attention, through one thing, really, the physical shelf, right? And, yes, they had these big TV ads and brands with huge marketing teams behind them, but really they didn't own and pay for, if they didn't own and pay for their spot on the shelf at Target, they wouldn't have had the customer. So it was all about owning that physical shelf, because that's where the foot traffic was, which is, a metric that we today think of as impressions or glance views. So it was just really foot traffic. And those went into the metrics that they measured, like ACV and velocity and all of that stuff. And what's important for us to remember, though, is that this was the reality for the last 50 years, right? Which meant that it was the reality for most of our lifetimes. And we really didn't know anything different. So when a new company, like one of your companies would come and, try to launch to sell, cheaper garbage bags or eco-friendly soaps or something like that, they just failed, because like without size, they couldn't get the attention of Targets and Walmarts of the world, which meant they had no physical shelf presence, which meant they were dead on arrival. But then after the turn of the century, the digital shelf appeared. And then two fundamental shifts occurred. First, foot traffic became web traffic, right? The impressions and glance views that we're always looking at on our Amazon PDPs. And second, that the flow of that foot traffic became governed first by digital ads, and second by platform search pages, search engines. And if you guys are familiar with Ben Thompson of Stratechery, he has a great post really delving into the details on this. But what he essentially says, and what that means, is that meant that Google and Amazon then replaced Target and Walmart. And what that also meant was that how much shelf space you took up wasn't determined by like, have you paid for that shelf space at Target? No, how much shelf space you took up was greatly influenced by your advertising spend, both on platform like Amazon PPC, and off platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So going back to the beginning of the story, all of a sudden, Nestle and the Procter and Gambles of the world lost their footing. And that not only allowed for new companies who were digitally native and new Facebook ads and Amazon's better than anyone else to win, it also allowed sellers like FBA sellers to flourish. And you both know this very well, having gotten on the Amazon platform as sellers in 2015, which was relatively early. But, today we see a lot of acquisitions happening in the digital space. And those digitally native brands that I talked about, who are really good with the Facebook ads and the Shopify websites and all of that, they've been getting snapped up by the Nestle's and Procter and Gambles of the world, because they just want to learn from these young brand owners, right? And we've been seeing that for a while. But no one, as you guys pointed out, no one was paying attention to the FBA sellers who are not only killing it on Amazon, but who are also entrepreneurs who often were looking for exit opportunities. And so that's where we come in. We're essentially the Nestle 2.0 of the world, is how we like to talk about it, because we not only see the value of FBA sellers. Many of us are FBA sellers, and we see the value in the platform business, and we are their exit opportunity if they want that. And so in that way, our presence has just opened up, I believe, this world of opportunity for that scrappy 20-year-old entrepreneur and his dog collar business, right? And it creates a gateway for these naturally talented people to then become serial entrepreneurs or to grow their business alongside us. And we have a program that we're developing internally to help them do exactly that. So I really believe that, the reward for being a successful seller on Amazon should not be that you're constantly fighting Amazon to protect your business and, listening to every podcast that you can and like staying up at night because you haven't launched a video ad yet or whatever. I think the reward should be, a lucrative exit if you want it, and an entry into the world of best-in-class entrepreneurship with a company like Boosted.
That just there's so many things in there that we could touch on as well. Because one quick thing is, when I was first starting, everyone's no one understood what I was doing. Like friends and family, I'm like, yeah, I'm selling on Amazon. They're like, oh, whatever. I thought I was like an eBay seller or something, just selling junk. But I was like, no, it's like, imagine I can like walk into Walmart and put my products in the middle shelf. That's
Exactly.
that's what I'm doing, except I'm not having to make $2 million orders or fulfill purchase orders. I can just order a few hundred units and put them on there, and it's working. So in that regard, you're right about that digital shelf. It's fascinating. What else I think is interesting now is a lot of sellers, or Amazon sellers, they are exiting and then they're starting over again. And they're able to do it better because they've got more capital, they've got more knowledge. Because there's certainly challenges as you scale, as you get bigger and bigger and bigger. It can be tougher. Sometimes it's smarter to exit, start over, build another one. That's where, sort of, at least for me, I feel like that's where my skill set and what I have fun doing is more in that, the infancy stage, growing it, getting it to adulthood and then selling. So it's really fascinating. But let's talk about now. So Kris and I, we're sellers. People are listening are sellers. If this is our plan now, if we're either starting from scratch and we're looking to exit, or we're where we are and exiting is now an option, what are some things that sellers need to be doing or thinking or mindset to prepare themselves for an exit?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of things. It's important to think about the life cycle of your brand, of your company, and where it's at. You want it to be at a place where you have demonstrated growth and at the same time demonstrated some stability in your business. And the reason for that is because when you approach a company like Boosted, we have, and you start going through, for example, our diligence process. We have a big team of people who are looking at your business and trying to understand how it works, because it's your baby and we want to make sure that we run it really well. So be prepared to explain all of those things around where you are in the life cycle, what kind of growth you've had and why. It could be like stuff around brand registry. It could be around stuff around a killer PPC strategy. It could be, you have, I listen to your podcast, and it's a lot of the stuff that you guys talk about on your podcast, right? Like why your latest new product launch strategy failed, right? I mean, it's that kind of stuff. You come in and you talk, be prepared to talk about those things and really show that you know your stuff, and that the reasons why you've been able to demonstrate that growth and stability.
Kris, we got a question that came in from YouTube. Why don't you pull that up here? Because she kind of touched on it. But the question is what would be a better way to grow a business slowly, or I'm assuming just focus on really aggressively, quickly growing a business for the exit? What is more attractive from the perspective of a Boosted, the acquisition company?
That question demonstrates to me that whoever asked it is exactly the type of seller that is really interesting to us. Because if you as a seller are like, should I be growing aggressively? Or, I mean, if you have control over how quickly you can grow,
yeah,
that says a lot. Most people have no control over that. Going back to my days when I was running my food business, I had no control over how frequently I got a PO. My business, right? So I think the question in itself demonstrates a lot of control and power in your business that in itself is valuable. Now getting to the question itself, slow, steady growth versus quick growth is it depends on your industry. It depends on the number of ASINs you have. It depends on how much PPC spend you put behind it. So you may, for example, I mean, one of frankly, dozens of scenarios could be that you decided that you're going to, put PPC spend at a target A cost of 50% and just not worry about margin for the first, let's say, 3 to 6 months of your product, so that you get up to that second spot on the keyword search results. And then when you're there, you've actually built really good fundamentals on your business in the back end, where you have an amazing review base, and you're optimizing your cost of goods sold so that you're improving your margin over time. And if that's your story, well, fantastic, right? Like that quick growth, even at the cost of your margin, could be a really good story to bring to an aggregator like Boosted, because you're showing that you've thought through why you're doing that. I needed to secure the first spot. Once I got the first spot, I know I'm going to stay there because here are my fundamentals, right? Versus another store, you may be breaking into a really big category, for example, and you just can't, use those typical levers of PPC and the CPC bids may be too high. And so you can't grow that quickly. You've got to kind of chip away and wait to take advantage of opportunities, like when a competitor, gets suppressed or something like that to shoot up in the rankings. I mean, there are many situations where both could be legitimate stories.
One thing I want to talk about is like what gets a Boosted excited. Like when you see a seller account, and this is just Dustin and I's background. Like we're launching product and we're kind of steadily growing, and we have ups and downs. One day our product goes out of stock and then it comes back in, and there's just we're just kind of fighting the good fight, right? Trying to get those products to rank, trying to sell hundreds of units a day, but it's just kind of slow, right? It's just kind of steady. Yeah. What gets Boosted's attention? Like if I come to you and I'm a seller and I just got, maybe a little bit of declining growth and it comes back and it's not just skyrocket all the way up to the top, but there's potential there. What is there that you could say, okay, we see this account, if we just did A, B, and C, we could take this account from 50 grand a month in revenue to 100 grand a month just by doing a few things. What are kind of those things?
Yeah, there's so much there. There's so much there.
This is probably for my own good, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think like going back to the point of like finding product market fit, right? Like if you are the type of if you're the type of seller who like you mentioned, like you've had any type of growth, by the way, is going to have ups and downs. Like never will Boosted look at like a track record with up and downs and be like, that's not, no, I mean, that's business, So it's a very reasonable approach to looking at growth trajectories. But, there's the types of things that we can do. We have, this is stuff that we hold close to the chest, but we do have a list of playbooks, just like dozens and dozens of playbooks on what you can do to grow brands on Amazon. And I can talk about one that's not going to be too surprising to you, but like, you guys can figure, like I've worked as an Amazon manager and for a startup, like new D2C company, as well as for a Procter & Gamble brand. Well, I have, because of that, a pretty good idea of how to build a good brand, from just a visuals perspective. So let's say you come to me and you have not you just haven't had the know-how. You've gone to 99designs.com and stuff, but you haven't had the know-how of like how to do that focus group testing, the customer surveys, those customer decision tree studies that cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do, right? You haven't had the resources to invest in all of that. And so if you come to us, you say, well, here's my growth trajectory. It could be that one of the things we look at is we say, this is a solid business. It has, slow but steady growth, good fundamentals around these, metrics that we look for. And we know that if we come in and revamp the brand, and we always do that with the seller's partnership. We never do something like that without getting the go-ahead from the seller, even post-sale, right? We're partners all along. You're never going to see something happen to your baby that you're like, what the hell, right? But if you're up for it, we can take your brand and revamp it, and that alone, right, with the appropriate listing optimization, will make it take off. And then we've also got our other channels, right, that are even off Amazon to pump that brand through and really start building that presence in a way that, and this is where it gets like really cool. It's a way that can build your brand presence that is truly digitally native, truly Fifth Avenue real estate, truly the Nestle 2.0 of the world. So that's just one example of the dozens of playbooks we have around how to boost a brand, is what we call it.
Something that gets me kind of giddy is like, sellers create a brand and they're like, oh, they fight, they stay up all night, just the battle of it. But if you sell it to like a boosted and they take it, and what's after acquisition? Like, would I be surprised to see it in a Walmart someday or a Target someday? Like is that where it's going to go? Like, you're going to take it to new levels where it's going to be in retail, or is it just going to be on Amazon and we're going to just stay focused and we're going to chop away at Amazon and take all that market share? Like, is that conversations that you have with sellers after you acquire them, or is it just like, here you go, take it, now it's on you guys? Like,
those are the most exciting calls that we have with sellers, because post acquisition, first of all, like when they're going through the sales process, our team that does like some of the acquisitions, they are super smart people. Some of whom I've known even personally before joining the company, but super smart, really great people. They're like on texting relationships with the sellers. So they're like texting back and forth all the time, and they're buddies. They're really buddies. And on my side, where I along with my colleague Drew are running operations, what we do is we have a weekly, the boring stuff, the weekly meeting cadences and all of that. But it's really about building the vision. We come to them, we say, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do. And then we say, can you imagine, right? 3 to 5 years, this milestone, and sometimes the milestone is, can you imagine seeing your baby on the shelf of Walmart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it gets really exciting. And that's where it's like, that's the thing that really drives me in this business on the seller relationship side, is like, again, like, you guys, the sellers, and you guys and gals are really just like you're the pioneers, right? You're the ones who are fighting. You're the ones who are staying up all night. You're going up against Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, that's what your daily life is about. But once you come into the Boosted family, the resources just like balloon, Like I said, like, New York City retail, like, magnates, and Silicon Valley digital marketing experts. We're texting with you, right? And so that's where it is. And it's like, hey, by the way, when you go to start your next business, here's the story, here's the framing of where aggregators sit in the space, and here's how it's moving and changing. And these are the lenses that you're seeing happening. And here's your path forward as a seller. Here's your career forward. And we are totally there to support and help guide that career if it's appropriate. I mean, some people want to go sit on a beach, and then so we just send them a bottle of champagne. But but if you want,
and then they do it again.
Yeah.
Exactly. But like, go have your champagne. It's fine. We'll be here waiting.
What's it look like after, like, because I mean, guilty pleasure here. Like, it'd be really hard for me just to give something away that I've worked years on, and I still want to be a part of it. Like, I still want to have kind of skin in the game.
Yeah.
But what type of acquisition is it? Like all or nothing, or am I able to give like a percentage every year? Like creative financing. Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, without getting, I can't share a whole lot of details, but in general, I would say it is usually just a purchase of the business. But there are a lot of ways that the seller stays involved. But yeah, I mean, the way that I think about it is, like, again, think about it like if you are selling to, like a Procter and Gamble or a Nestle or something like that, right? Like, you would usually they're acquiring the business. They might acquire some of the employees of the business as well, which they usually call like an acqui-hire type of situation. But for the majority of the time, we are just buying the businesses outright.
Okay.
Yeah. And what does that time frame look like? What does that process look like? So if I come to you, we have our initial contact, I express interest in selling. From that point on until the agreement signed and there's money in my bank, what does that look like? How much time does it usually take? Yeah,
it's usually, I mean, we have we pride ourselves on a very quick process. It's usually 45 days to close. And so, yeah, it's way faster than other industries. And the way it looks like is it's basically a bunch of question and answer sessions, essentially. Yeah, that's the typical what people would call diligence.
So there's a lot of noise in this space. I mean, sellers talk to other sellers, and sellers know like this is going on. Like we know that you got to spend money, right? You have time to spend the money, and like this year, maybe even into 2022, would be like the prime time, is what I'm hearing, is like the prime time to get rid of a business and maybe start a new one, and kind of keep flipping it back and forth. Where do you see it? Like, is that the same? Are you seeing it the same? Like, 2021, 2022, those are going to be the prime years. We're going to look back on this 6 years from now and be like, remember when multiples were that high? Like, is now the time?
I'll try to say, I have no clue. It's just, whenever it gets into predicting the future, I just tend to say, I don't know. And I think we all kind of feel that way after the last, year, right?
Yeah, no lie.
So I would just say I really don't know. I agree with you. It's really exciting. We certainly see those conversations happening between sellers, because in a lot of ways we're part of the seller community too. And so I think all of the excitement, speculation is just a sign of how big and growing and quickly growing the category is. I think so looking at now, it is exciting. It is really exciting. And the growth is there. I mean, even if you just have your business on Amazon, Amazon is growing so quickly as a platform with so many new customers. If you did nothing and just maintained your space, the business would grow. And so I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I wish I did.
That leads me to a question. Talking about if you have a business that's just on Amazon, is that almost more attractive to a Boosted because there's growth opportunity? They haven't already grown into all the other available avenues. Is that better?
We say that we acquire e-commerce businesses. So the space has happened to be branded as like an Amazon aggregator space, just because so many of the businesses are so heavy on Amazon. And it takes a lot, as everyone knows, to understand a platform. But we are an e-commerce aggregator. So yeah, definitely, we always look at other channels and whether for brands coming in or for, expanding and growing our existing brands.
I got something. Yeah. So
I knew you're ready to go. So go.
So we create relationships with vendors. Like we create relationships with our manufacturers. We create relationships with our photographers. All these people that make the business, like their listings. We want to make sure, sellers want to make sure like that's a seamless process. Like if I have a manufacturer I work with, and I've worked with this manufacturer for years, I hand it over. I want to make sure, that I think you understand what I'm saying. We want to make sure that is the right way. Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, for those listening in, I'm smiling a lot, like from the beginning of Kris's question, because we have like a full team dedicated to this, and it is completely seamless. And it's just funny. I just think about it because in the first days of any brand joining our platform, a lot of my time personally is spent on the vendor management, and making sure that I get it, right? Like I had my own food business. I know like how important those relationships are, and especially if you want to start another business later. And it's your reputation as well. I mean, all of that stuff is really, really important. And so we just, we basically try to make it so that the vendors and partners feel as if nothing has happened almost in the business. You know what I mean? Like for them, it's like, they're still getting paid exactly on time in the way that they want. They're still getting communications at the same cadence. I mean, sometimes even they're still getting communicated from the same people. It's super smooth. And then it's always up to seller guidance. I mean, some sellers are like, this was the best supplier I could get because I'm not big enough. but that's the one that I wanted for my business. Then it becomes interesting for them, and it becomes wanted that, no, we want you guys to actually change that relationship. And then we can go do that. And that falls into that playbook of things that we can do to grow the business.
That's really, I mean, what I'm getting from this conversation, which is really, it's great to be getting this feeling, is that there's a relationship going into this. Like if we're looking to sell and we're going with you guys, that all parties are going to be cared about. Like we're working as a team to make this the best way to go. Because that to Kris's point, yeah, I mean, my supplier flies out to see me sometimes from China. It's like I don't want to sell and be like, oh, he's out, we can find a cheaper place or whatever, like immediately, where it's just ruining that relationship and all the other vendors. So it's comforting to see that this is the approach, and it's really an intentional approach that's being taken by you guys to make this process seamless.
Well, it's a big deal. Like it
is.
It's your supplier that you went out and found, and now you negotiated. You got a product. They built a business, and then just to hand that off. I mean, it kind of freaks me out. But I'm glad that Sarah is kind of making me feel better.
Well, yeah, I mean, and just so you Kris and Dustin know, like I told you guys I started out my career in management consulting, and I was kind of flying around the world and stuff. I had a food blog at the same time, because I told you that's kind of, I'm all about food. And so what I did was I took advantage of the privilege of being able to go to different countries to speak with entrepreneurs on the ground, and I wrote about it in my blog. And these were all again, small, scrappy entrepreneurs. And I wrote up their stories. I think at some point I was writing every single day. And there would be stories about this guy living in Jordan importing coffee, really high quality coffee, one of the first guys in Jordan to do that. And he would talk about the frustration of importing green coffee beans from this amazing supplier, and then having the customs agents hold it on a sunny, hot tarmac and have the beans start to roast in the bags before he could get it into his roasters. And those of you who love coffee know that this is catastrophe, right? I mean, I wrote I had dozens of interviews like that before even starting my own business. Mm-hmm. And so I get it. I know the pain. I've lived it, and many of us have at Boosted. And so this stuff is if your hair would be on fire, our hair would be on fire too, right? If you guys couldn't sleep about it, we probably aren't sleeping about it either.
Well, it's so good to know. I mean, that just makes this whole process seem so much smoother, more comforting. It's like Kris and I said this before. I mean, this is your baby when you start a business. You are, I mean, I've got 2 boys, and I've got my wife and my business, and you love it. You love what you're doing, and it's hard to part with. So knowing that this is the way it's taken care of is great. And also, we just really appreciate all this time that you're spending with us to go over this stuff. And I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about it, but real quick, what would be one thing that you would tell someone who's looking to exit? What's something that's so important to make sure you have in order before you start looking to reach out to aggregators?
Mm-hmm. Make sure that you understand why you're selling, really deeply understand why you're selling and what you want out of the sale. And when you do that, research who you're going to sell to, because they're going to be your partner. It's so easy to think this is a transaction, but it's not. They're going to be your partner. So look for the people who you think will get you and who will support you and who will be good partners. Be ready. So it's a little bit of a soul search, right? What do I really, really want out of this? And how do I want this to shape my career?
That's a great answer. That's a different answer than I was expecting or have heard in the past about, that's totally different than making sure all your accounting is in order or something like that, where it is more transactional minded. I love that.
On all those things. We can help on all those things, you know. I mean, that's something that, you know, you got, again, it's one person, you're pioneers in this space. You are not expected to be ready to sell to a Procter and Gamble or a Nestle. You're expected to be ready to sell to a Boosted. And we're your partners in that process. So, I mean, accounting and all that stuff, trust me, we can help.
That again is also comforting, just because that's a lot of, I think that would be a nervous point for that. That may be something that I would be concerned about is, do I have have I been doing my accounting exactly the right way, for the last 7 years to make this look like it's the right thing to sell? I mean, there's so many things in this business that you're not always focused on, and it's you can't manage it like Fortune 500 company or something.
Of course, and you're not expected to. You're not expected to. It's just an unrealistic expectation. Yeah, no, I mean, I always just defer to speaking about ourselves, but we can help with all that stuff. It's really more about what do you want to get out of this? What is your future going to look like for you as an entrepreneur starting or continuing your career, and for your business, which is, after being sold to Boosted, is going to go through a pretty cool inflection point. And what do you want that inflection point to end up turning into 5 years in the future?
Well said. Well, anybody listening right now, if they would like to get this process started, or if they want to reach out to you, how do they get started or get in contact with you or Boosted in general? What should they do?
Feel free to, especially if you're selling a business in the food or ingestible space, feel free to reach out to me directly, Sarah with an H at boostedcommerce.com. Or you can go to our website, boostedcommerce.com, and we have a very easy form to fill out to get you started on the process right away.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I encourage everyone to do that. Anyone who's in this is thinking about this right now, definitely reach out to Sarah and the team at Boosted. Sarah, this has been absolutely fantastic to have you on. We'll have to do this again. There's so much we could dive into, so many, go down different rabbit holes. There's so much to talk about, but this has been absolutely fantastic. And for everybody listening right now, if you like this kind of content, we go live almost every day with the podcast. We live stream it to Facebook, YouTube. You can see all the videos on the Solozo YouTube page, and also make sure you like the Facebook Solozo page and turn on notifications so you know when we go live with awesome people like Sarah. Also, you can always listen to us on the podcast. So whatever podcast platform you use, we are there. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast as well there, and leave us a review if you can. An honest review, as Amazon sellers are trained to say. Just leave us an honest review for sure. But reach out to Sarah, boostedcommerce.com, and we will be back at this again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.